We are blessed to have with us today Dr. Michael Ketterhagen. Michael retired as Associate Professor of Theology after many years of teaching at Marian University. He received his doctorate in spirituality and healing at the Union Institute at the University in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is the spiritual director at the Fond du Lac Center for Spirituality and Healing, an organization that he founded 24 years ago. He is a certified yoga instructor and studied at the Himalayan Institute at Honesdale, Pennsylvania. He is here today to share with us his journey toward wholeness and well-being. Michael Ketterhagen.
Thank you, Jeannie. And welcome to you all. Welcome to part of my spiritual journey. On March 23, 2021, I saw my primary physician because I had a tough time getting over what I thought was a cold. I had tested negative twice for COVID-19 and needed to find out what was wrong with me. I had been in bed for most of the week, sleeping about 16 to 18 hours a day since my 74th birthday on March 18th. However, 5 days later, after 5 days after entering my 75th birthday of living here on the planet, my primary doctor said to me upon my entering his office, "I want you to go to the emergency room immediately. You are suffering from kidney failure." At that time, my kidney function was 12%. Not bad enough to put me on dialysis, but close enough so that very soon, if I kept going in that direction, I would be on dialysis. In the emergency room, the doctors put me through lots of tests and confirmed that, in fact, I was experiencing kidney failure and that they needed to find out why. I was immediately admitted to the hospital and was tested for potential blood diseases. Sure enough, I was diagnosed the next day with multiple myeloma. My cancer ratio count was over 4,100. The normal high rate, is 2.01. One of the cancer cells, called the Kappa Lambda chain, was recorded as over 11,000, when the normal high is 2.69. Needless to say, I was quite ill. I was quite sick, and the doctors immediately put me on steroids to bring down the light chain count. The steroids were very effective, bringing the light chain count down within the next week to about 400. Still quite high, but now at least measurable and manageable, because it made a difference. It allowed my kidney function to rise to 35%. Now my kidney function is about anywhere from 52 to 60%. My oncologist told me that the only treatment for me would be a stem cell transplant. Nothing else would save my life. At first I panicked and felt very sad. Then within my mind, a small voice said to me, "This is part of your spiritual journey. This is your spiritual journey right now." Excuse me. The diagnosis and treatment were quite a challenge for me to hear because, as many of you know, I've been teaching, and some of you might even say preaching, holistic health practices and non-medical complementary and alternative methods for dealing with illness. I lived and taught the yoga lifestyle. That lifestyle included vegetarianism, high-quality food, no preservatives, and regularly practicing yoga and meditation. I was proud of myself for living such a healthy lifestyle for someone who was in my early 70s. Even after 2 total knee replacements, I still teach yoga and practice it. So now I was confronted with the idea of whether or not I should have a stem cell transplant, which is an extremely invasive and extremely challenging medical procedure. Excuse me, sometimes I get a little teary. It contradicted everything that I had believed in about holistic health medicine and the lifestyle I was promoting. My wife, Mary, who's a registered nurse, told me that it was totally up to me about my treatment. I could go the natural route, or I could take the medical option. She said that she would be okay with me doing whatever practice I wanted to treat the cancer, either with a stem cell transplant or fighting it in a natural way. However, I knew that deep down, Mary had hoped that I would extend my life as much as possible using the conventional medical procedures. After all the doctors believed that the transplant would be very successful because you're a really healthy person. Usually people come in here with broken bones and other medical problems, and that's how they find out that they have multiple myeloma. I knew I was quite healthy. Almost everyone told me how good I looked at how old I was. Yet, here I was faced with a life-threatening disease that meant I must seriously consider changing my perspective on health and healing. I was referred to Frederick Hospital and was told that because I was over 70, I could not get the standard stem cell transplant. I had to use my own blood. Usually people under 70 get someone else's blood. However, the Frederick doctor said that because you're so healthy and had a history of no medications at all, he felt quite confident in a successful transplant. I had maintained my health prior to this with homeopathy, acupuncture, aromatherapy, healing touch, naturopathy, and yogic meditation whenever illnesses entered my life. I would fight colds and flus with vitamins and minerals and essential oils, and it worked until now. I even healed myself of COVID-19 after the transplant. That's another story. I can tell you about that later. With homeopathic remedies. I knew holistic health methods and practices worked. This was definitely a spiritual and a philosophical crisis for me. My ego kicked in. How could I save face with all the people I told to live a natural life and now have to rely on the medical world? How could I tell them not to use the medical methods that they would be fine without depending on the conventional medical approach, when here I am going to have a stem cell transplant and would be taking the chemotherapy for the rest of my life? Well, because I had so much more I wanted to do in my life, and because I wanted to see my grandchildren, all 15 of them, play high school and college basketball and other sports, marry the loves of their life, and have their own children. And because I wanted to share the knowledge of yoga and theology that I accumulated through my years as a professor at Marian University and as a yoga teacher at the Center for Spirituality and Healing, I decided to go the stem cell route. After my diagnosis and return home under a steroid medication, I immediately changed my lifestyle. I eliminated as much sugar as possible from my diet. I drank alkalinized water and took vitamin and mineral supplements to strengthen my immune system as much as possible. I also set out to find out why I had contracted cancer, this cancer in particular. I believed, as yoga teaches, that we are spirits with minds and bodies, and not just mechanical bodies that think. the source of all illness, except because of ultra-processed foods and environmental toxins in our culture today, and that's another talk at another time. Really, the cause of our illness is spiritual and mental. During most of my life as a teacher at Marian and a yoga instructor, I stayed away from ultra-processed foods and worked hard to eliminate environmental toxins in my water, in my food, in the gardens that we had, our vegetable gardens. Everything about our life was trying to become as natural as possible. According to this holistic health model, illness then begins on the metaphysical level in us. Meta means beyond, physical means physical. So beyond the physical level. And the thought, in other words, the thoughts and deep emotional patterns of thinking were the cause of my illness. That meant that I needed to figure out what I was thinking and what I was feeling in order to know the cause of my cancer. I referred to Louise Hay's book, Heal Yourself, and learned that the cause of blood cancer, all blood cancer, is a lack of joy in one's life. This shocked me. I always thought I was a joyful person. And the way to remedy that is to change my thinking on the deep unconscious level. That made sense to me because the experiences that I had a few years prior to my diagnosis triggered deep bitterness in me. Without going into detail, it's not necessary, I found myself very angry and hurt at what had happened to me, and I had not resolved it. So I determined to work on bringing more joy and gratitude into my life. Mary talks about that all the time. Michael, you're not smiling yet. I didn't realize that it was going to be as hard as it was until I experienced stem cell transplant. In September, early September, I entered the hospital for my transplant and was given a shot to activate my stem cells and move them from my bone marrow into my bloodstream. They would then be captured by a machine separated from the plasma and the other parts of the blood so that they could be radiated, killing the blood cells in that blood, in those cells, and returned back again to my body later. It didn't work. For some reason, my body did not want to release my stem cells into the circulatory system. The drug was quite strong and sent fire and pulsations throughout my whole body. This was quite agonizing at the time, and I had difficulty sleeping that first night. So they doubled the dose for night 2, hoping for more releasing on the second day of the blood draw. Again, very few cells were in my bloodstream. They tripled the dose for the third attempt to get some of the stem cells out of my bone marrow. Meanwhile, the intensity of my reactions also increased. The next morning, before the third attempt to draw the blood, they stopped the machine and told me, go home. Not enough stem cells were in my bloodstream. I was to rest from all the medications and let my body come to some semblance of peace. 2 weeks passed before the fire and the pulsation stopped. I was to come back about 4 to 6 weeks later so they could try again. Well, when I returned, I was feeling pretty good. And we were all hopeful that we would get some stem cells into my bloodstream. Before that night, before the first day's draw, they gave me 4 doses of the chemical. That night I almost couldn't bear it. The next morning after the draw, the nurse said that she would call me and let me know how many cells they had harvested so that the next day they would know what to expect. However, the doctor was not very confident and ordered 6 doses of the chemical to prepare me for the second day's draw. That night was pure hell. I'm sorry. And thank you. That's okay. That night was pure hell. I'll go into my head instead of my heart. It was spiritual, and it was my spiritual awakening. All along, I had convinced myself and the doctor that I was going to prove that the medical world and the holistic health world could actually complement each other, and that each of those worlds could work together to help people heal. However, with all the agony that I experienced that night after the increase in the chemical, I was ready to quit the medical world. The nurse didn't call to tell me whether the first draw was successful, and I woke up the next morning ready to quit the medical approach altogether. However, that second morning, I woke up singing a song. A Peter, Paul, and Mary song was in my mind. You'll hear the song. It goes like this. First of all, I would like to say a word or two. I know you won't be thinking it applies to you, but it's true and it do. All your life you have had to sing this song alone, not believing anybody could have known, but it's wrong. And you know. I found a song. Let me sing it with you. Let me say it now while the meaning is new. But wouldn't it be good if we could sing it, say it together? Don't be afraid to sing me your mind. Sing about the joy that I know we would find, wind them around and see what they sound like together. The song is love. The song is love. We'll be hearing that later. I played this song on Mary's laptop. I'm sorry for being so emotional. And I started to sob. All my life, I had felt alone. I knew I was a good person. And all the good things I did here in life were to prove that I was good. But I had a hard time believing that I was truly loved. I believed in God, but never really felt God's presence in my life, deep down. Periodically, I got a glimpse of how close God was to me, but there was always a doubt that followed. But then and there, I was overwhelmed by God's love. I knew I was loved, and I knew God loved me. I was no longer alone. I deeply felt that God and I were one. And that it didn't matter what I decided to do about my treatment. I could go the holistic route, and I would be well. Something I need to tell you so that you understand how significant this song was for me. Ever since my diagnosis, I woke up every morning with a song in my mind. My inner voice, the divine singer within me, was telling me something important every morning. My inner spirit wanted me to know that all would be well, that it was traveling with me. It would tell me in song how the day would go. My spirit would give me singing advice on what to do for that day. It would give me advice on which doctor to listen to and how I should even eat. It would help me negotiate and manage my feelings. My inner voice, that inner voice, was always out in front, guiding me during this challenging time. It helped me realize that my job was to go through this healing process using both the medical world and the holistic health world. I could teach people that the unity was possible. So when I heard the Peter, Paul, and Mary song, I was overwhelmed and realized that I had nothing to worry about. I realized that my life had meaning and purpose, no matter what I did, no matter how long I would live on the earth. So that morning, when I was to start the second draw of blood, after an excruciating night of fire and shaking and pulsing, not knowing if the first draw was effective at all, I was ready to quit the medical world's process. When I got to the hospital, however, the nurse told me that they harvested 1,300 cells in the first draw, the number that they had believed I needed to after 2 draws, and that the cells harvested from this draw today would be more than they would need. Hallelujah. Altogether, they harvested almost 3,000 stem cells, and I decided to go ahead with the treatment, with the transplant. That was only the first part of the treatment. Now, I had to kill all the cancer cells in my body before they would put back any of my new cleaned cells. The next week that followed was another torture week. They gave me the drug melphalan, an extremely strong poison. It killed any cell that grew fast and wiped out all the bacteria in my gut. It was a week of hair loss, vomiting, diarrhea, and losing 35 pounds of body fat. Thanks to Mary's cooking and her presence and the consolation from my inner voice, the God within me, I came away with no cancer on the first bone marrow transplant 2 weeks later. I was cancer-free for the next 90 days and began to pursue an aggressive schedule of energy therapy on all levels. I had learned from a Dr. Tennant, a very important person in the medical world. Many people don't know about him at all. That when electromagnetic frequency in my cells fell below a certain energy level, that those cells would begin to mutate and cancer would start to grow. With my immune system wiped out completely, I was no longer immune to measles, mumps, colds, flus, or any germs and diseases. I had to rebuild my immune system through diet, vitamins, minerals, clean water, lots of rest, no sugar, alkaline water, and pre and probiotic diet. I began an energy therapy protocol, which included intense PEMF treatments with oxygen therapy once a week, a subtle beamer treatment daily, and laser treatment twice a week. These therapies were united with my yoga practice, which included not only asanas, but pranayamas and meditation. Pranayamas are breath practices. And meditation, of course, is something else. After I received the cancer-free notice from the doctors and my kidneys were given a positive diagnosis, I decided to go chemical-free. However, the cancer started again after a year, and I'm now on what is called a chemical maintenance schedule to keep the cancer cells sleeping, besides all the other energy therapies and holistic health practices that I do. So, with my work, I'm bringing joy, forgiveness, and gratitude back into my life and living a life with purpose and meaning. I still teach yoga at the center and meditation, and I have a spirituality group there. And living a life of purpose and meaning and connecting more and more with the divine within myself and continuing to raise my energy, especially the mitochondria within our cells. Through PEMF work, laser work, and yoga and meditation, I am living a life of wholeness and well-being. I am walking with my whole life, my body, my mind, and my spirit, every day. because now I know that I am loved. I know that I am never alone, ever.